Yeah, so we're diving into a series I'm calling Save the Date. And we're going to be talking about a lot of stuff, a lot of heavy stuff. We're going to be talking about dating. We're going to be talking about marriage. We're going to be talking about singleness. We're going to be talking about sex. We're going to be talking about a lot of things that I feel like you guys just need to know and that you deal with a lot. And the goal of all this is to set you guys up to win in your future. It's not to just have something to talk about, because I believe that this is one of the most important things ever. But besides your relationship with God, marriage, who you're going to marry, that's one of the most important things in your life. It really is. So tonight, we're going to dive into that. Now, how many of you in this room, by raise of hands, would say, I'm single? Just by raise of hand. It's okay. Man, look at this. This is awesome. All right, look around the room, okay? If you need to get some numbers afterwards, okay? Just teasing. Cool, yeah, okay. So how many would you say I'm in a dating relationship right now? I've got a boyfriend and girlfriend. Cool, yeah. How many of you guys would just say it's complicated? Yeah, cool. Yeah. Some of you married people need to put your hands down, okay? Okay, who's been married the longest? Okay, whatever, Melissa. All right, Melissa wins. Great. All right. So I believe that this is one of the most, what we're going to talk about tonight is, I believe, is one of the most important times in your life. And what we're going to talk about tonight is the space where you're not really responsible for anyone but yourself. But the problem is that everyone wants to skip this step in the relationship process, because you assume that you have what it takes to date. You assume that you have what it takes to get married in your future. And that's why a lot of you just change boyfriends and girlfriends like you change clothes, right? Like, because you think you have it all together, but the reality is that you probably don't. Because honestly, if you're dating someone in this room, a lot of you guys that would say, yeah, I've got a boyfriend, I've got a girlfriend, yeah, we're dating. A lot of you guys, to be honest, if I would ask you, and I think I have asked you some of these questions, can you see yourself marrying that person? Do you know what I've gotten from a lot of you guys? Like, no. So the reality is that if you can't say that, what is the purpose of your dating relationship? What is the true, if you are a follower of Jesus, what is the purpose of your relationship? You say, I just date for fun and all this stuff. No, what's the real purpose? What are you doing in your relationship? Because here's the reality, guys, is that 50% of marriages end in divorce. 50%. Because here's the reality is we go into relationships so haphazardly, don't we? Oh, they are so cute. Oh my gosh, like he is built, like he is fine, he is cute. You should see him in a uniform. He is just hot. Here's how we approach our relationships, right? Now you're laughing because you're like, yeah, that's right. That's how we approach it. They're so funny. Oh my goodness. And the reality is we look on the outer part of them and we have no idea what they're like on the inside, because we look at the wrong things. How many of you in this room, just by raise of hand, would be honest, and would say, I've been affected by divorce. It's impacted me in a negative way. So literally half of the room, right? Half of the room has been affected by divorce. And that's what I said, 50% of marriages. So that just goes to show you that that's the way that it is. But I truly feel that if we could work on this one thing, guys, we could literally change that entire percentage. We could change that. Because a lot of you probably look at like your mom and your dad, they've gotten divorced. You look at maybe your grandparents have gotten divorced. Your aunts and uncles have gotten divorced. And it just seems like you have this fear of marriage that it's like, I can't get divorced. I can't get married because I'm going to get divorced. Because what you do is you look at that and it's like, man, that's just, it's just a curse. I'm destined to fail in marriage because all my family has. And the reality is that if you live your life for Christ and you pursue and you get this thing right, I'm telling you, your marriage will not fail. You can break that generational curse, and it can stop with you. And you can say, you know what, from this point on, I am moving forward, and as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord, and we will put God first. And I'm not just going to settle for any guy. I'm not just going to settle for any girl, but the person that I'm going to settle for is someone that is madly and passionately in love with Jesus, and there's nothing below that will do. We got to have that mindset, guys. And so tonight with that, I want to talk to you about singleness. Singleness. Because what I believe is that this step, nobody teaches us about, do they? Like no one emphasizes singleness. Because when I was your age, like when I was a teenager, like no one stressed to me the importance of singleness. Like, I don't know about you, but I felt like I was always being pushed into a relationship. Like my mom's like, you need to get out of the house and you need to date. You know, you need to go out with someone. And so like, I'm like, Mom, I don't really want to right now. But it's like she would constantly try to push me and nag me to like go out on a date with someone. And it's like I just really didn't have a desire to, but she just kept pushing me. And a lot of you guys feel probably some of that pressure like to date, right? Would anybody just be honest by your hands, like feel like say I do feel pressure to date? Anybody? Okay, like one person. I think you're all lying. It's okay. Jesus knows your heart. But we're always being pushed in a relationship. Like even now, some of your old moms is just pushing you to date. You've got friends that's pushing you to date, right? You should date him. You should date her. But I got to be honest, like no one ever told me the importance of singleness and the importance of that season of my life. No one ever told me about that. Because here's the reality, guys. That's that time in your life. Like right now, where you're at in your life, this is a time you cannot get back. You'll never get this time back ever again. And I remember for myself, every single careless decision that I ever made. I remember every minute that I wasted playing video games. And I could have used that time to be a better version of me, but I wasted a lot of time and a lot of years during my singleness. Because I recall being so broken from a relationship that I had gotten out of, that I had dated for 3.5 years. I remember being so broken from that relationship that I stopped dating for a complete 1.5 years. I shut myself off from my friends. I was in complete isolation. I shut the curtains. I put like a really thick blanket over my window so it would be completely dark so I could shut myself off from the world. And I lived in depression for like 1.5 years. And I could have been out with my friends. I could have used that time to go fishing, to go camping, to have fun, to enjoy life. I always said that I regret my teenage/college years because I always regret that because I'm thinking, man, I always wanted to hike the Appalachian Trail. And now I don't know that I'll ever get that opportunity because I wasted those years. I wasted a lot of my singleness, and it's a lot of years that I can't get back. But a lot of you guys know what I'm talking about because a lot of you guys in this room are wasting your days away. You're wasting your teenage years away, and you probably don't even realize it. You're wasting your years away, and you're trying to, and it's like we're just constantly living this life to where we're just trying to get into a relationship. Like some of y'all in this room are probably just trying to hook up with people in here as I speak, right? Like it might be going on right now, and I don't even know it. And I've seen it. I've seen some people mingling around. So if that's you, just stand up. I'm just teasing. Like, a lot of you guys feel that pressure to get in a relationship. And if you aren't in a relationship, the enemy begins to mess with your mind, doesn't he? Because you're not in a relationship, right? Like if you're in a relationship, the enemy begins to mess with your mind. He says, like, there's something wrong with you. You're not pretty enough. You're not good enough. Your nose is crooked. You've got weird, goofy teeth. And he begins to mess with your mind. He begins to put these negative thoughts in your mind that there's something wrong with you. You're too puny. You're too fat. You're not built enough. You're too much. And it begins to mess with your mind and put those thoughts in your mind. And when we look at relationships through that lens, here's the reality, guys. When we look at relationships through that lens, we'll take whatever we can get just so we can become Facebook official. Just so that we can say we're in a relationship, right? Or some of you guys, it's Valentine's Day. Some of you guys might even go to the extent of this, like, hey, I'm just going to date this guy just so I can get one of those cheap teddy bears and chocolates on Valentine's Day. And then I'm dumping him the next day. Like, there are legitimately people that do that kind of stuff, right? Because our culture teaches us that singleness is a bad thing. It's a bad thing. Think about it. What do we learn on the playground when we were little? First comes, then comes with a baby carriage, right? First comes love, then comes marriage, then comes whoever with a baby carriage, right? That's how we learn on the playground when we're little. The first thing is love, right? And I don't know about you, but I've never just walked up to someone and be like, oh, I love you. I've never walked up to someone and just fallen immediately and madly in love with that person. Because the reality is we miss a step of singleness. Singleness, guys, is so, so important. And we miss that time and we miss that opportunity because we try to rush into every single relationship just to make us feel better about ourselves. And we miss that step. If you're single in this room, people may even begin rumors about you. Maybe you've heard some of them, or you allow the enemy to begin putting things in your mind like why are you single? Aren't you lonely? Are you gay? And they begin saying these things about you, right? Like what's wrong with you? Because a lot of you in this room feel that you are expected to date. And maybe you don't feel that way, but if you aren't dating, you aren't cool, because social media has just increased enormously. Like you guys have, that's all you've ever known is you've grown up in a social media age. You don't really know anything outside of that. And there's this pressure to make sure that people know that you're not alone. You see a lot of married people go into marriage trying to basically figure out their singleness. They go into marriage that way. And the reality is it doesn't work because they've never discovered who they are. Because here's the reality. When you get into a marriage, guys, there are conditions, I guess I would say conditions, that you have to meet as a husband or a wife. Like when you get married, I hate to tell you guys this, but when you get married, you can't stay up till 4 o'clock in the morning playing video games. I'm sorry to burst your bubble. You just can't do it, okay? Because because at that time you're going to have a job, you're going to have responsibilities, you're going to have a boss, you have to provide for your family. When you have kids, you got to make sure that they're taken care of. You see, a lot of people think that when they get married, like, oh, when I get married, I'm going to have my own car. When I get married, I'm going to get, like, every off-road vehicle imaginable. It's going to be awesome. I'm going to get to do my own thing. I'm going to take vacations whenever I please. But the problem is that you need to figure out all of that stuff before you become one with someone. Because when you get married, it's no longer my car or my money. It is now our stuff. Okay? A lot of you guys are probably like, I'm never getting married. But a lot of people begin to fight over money and the cars and the decisions that they make with the money because they never took time to establish really who they were. And when you don't take time and when you don't know who you are, you won't pick the right person because you won't know who you are. When you guys get married, you are committed to that person until death. There is no way out of that marriage. If you're a Christian, divorce is non-existent. It's not a thing. The only thing that God tells couples that they're able to divorce is that if the other one commits adultery or if the spouse dies. That's the only two options. So when you find that right person, that's who you need to marry the rest of your life. That's who you're going to be with the rest of your life. You are committing that I am going to live with this person the rest of my life. And it is so, so important that you get that decision right. Because if you marry someone that is not in love with Jesus and that just does their own thing, like I don't care, you're going to have a very tough marriage. And you don't want that. I promise you, you do not want that. Some of you guys have seen things like that where maybe your mom comes to church, but your dad doesn't come to church. And you see the turmoil and you see the tension in your mom and dad's marriage. And it's not good, right? Some of you guys are like, yes, I hate that. I wish my mom was saved. I wish my dad was saved. But man, just living in our home, it just gets really, really hard. But you're committed when you get married. And I want to talk to you tonight about 3 different ways for us to enhance our singleness. 3 different ways to enhance our singleness. If you want to take notes, I would suggest that you get a pen out or get your phone out and start taking notes, not to text. But one of the first things I want to talk to you tonight is the first way is how do we enhance our singleness is this. We need to approach singleness as preparation and not isolation. Preparation and not isolation. One of the things that a lot of you guys have right now that you won't have later on is freedom and time. Freedom and time. If you're not married in this room, I promise you, you have a lot of freedom and you have a lot of time. I looked at this statistic and it kind of blew my mind. The average teen looks at their screen 7.5 hours a day. On average, 7.5 hours. So pretty much a third of your day is spent looking at a screen, okay? Here's what blows my mind about that. I looked up, how long does it take to read the Bible? I wanted to see, like, if you read the Bible from front to back, how long would it take you to do that? And I looked that up, and here's how long it takes to read the Bible. It was 70 hours and 40 minutes was like what it would take to read the Bible from front to back. Do you know what that tells me? If we read the Bible, the amount of time that we spend on our phones per day, we could read the entire Bible in 10 days. Wow. Now, I'm not just saying you guys, me included. That convicted me of like, oh man. Like 10 days, that's all it would take to read the Bible if we would really focus on it as much as we look at our phones? That's craziness. So what I'm trying to say is this, is we can't spend all of our time and all of our energy watching someone else's life. We need to spend time and energy living our own life instead of wasting our time and energy looking at other people's lives, which is what we do on our phones. We look at other people's lives. We see what's going on in their life. We binge out watching YouTube videos. But don't spend time putting out fantasy fires when, guys, I'm telling you, the real world is on fire right now. And the real world needs you guys. Because we spend all this time and all this energy on things that just don't matter. I have this friend, he's 35 and he's single. He's a single guy, he's 35 years old. And I look at his life and he's not, there's nothing wrong with him. He's a great, awesome Christian guy. And he goes on mission trips all the time. goes on mission trips. He actually started his own ministry where at the first of the year, he gets backpacks for kids in need. And like last year, he got over like 1,000 backpacks full of school supplies for kids in need. And he does things like that. You see, he's not wasting his time in his singleness. He could sit there and sulk because he's 35 years old and not married, right? But no, what is he doing? He is preparing and he is going after God with all that he has. He is using his singleness as preparation for what's to come instead of isolation. He's not just sitting back and sulking over his singleness. So what do I mean by, let me go back to that real quick. I would love to do those things. I would love to just go on mission trips, everyone. I would love to, go and start other ministries, like to help the homeless. Like I would love to just go and, like, to be honest, if I had time and energy, I would literally go and I would just sit with a homeless man for like a week and be completely fine with that. Because I have that passionate desire to do those things. But the reality is I can't do those things now because my obligation is to Rihanna, it's to my wife, it's to my kids, it's to my job. I can't commit to those things now because I'm tied down to this. And now here's what I'm getting to, and I'm getting to what I'm saying here. So what do I mean by preparation and not isolation? Well, when you aren't in a relationship, you can really easily have like this poor me mentality. Like, I no one loves me. Everyone hates me. Instead, we need to enjoy time with our friends because, guys, I'm telling you, you literally cannot get this time back. So what do we need to do? What do we need to do to prepare? What's some things that we can do? Well, there are things that once we get married that are very, very important right now, and you need to be developing. Here's some things. Here's some ways you can prepare in your singleness. Discover your gifts. What do you love to do? Maybe it's singing. Maybe you just need to take time. Like, I've always wanted to learn how to play the guitar. Like, just take some time. Get a guitar. You can get a guitar for pretty cheap. Watch YouTube videos. Like literally every single worship song we do, there is tutorials online that shows you how to play these songs, and you can learn an instrument. If you have a desire to do that, take time now in your singleness to do that. Maybe you want to learn a piano. Like, take time to do that. Maybe you're like, I really want to be a designer, a graphic designer when I grow up. Like, that's something I really want to do. Take time now and develop that gift. You have time now, and you have so much free time to be able to develop those gifts. If you want to be a videographer, like, take time, watch YouTube videos, see how they do certain things, learn lighting, learn about, different things and different settings on cameras, how to set like the white points on cameras, all this different stuff, how to slow down speeds on cameras. Like learn this stuff now and develop those gifts so that when you are at a place where you just don't have time for that, you've already developed those gifts and you've already become the person that you desire to be and that God desires you to be. Learn carpentry skills. Like learn how to build stuff, Learn how to change the oil when you're in a car. Learn how to change your tires. Like, take time and take energy to learn these skills of life that will help you later on. So discover your gifts. Another thing is grow in lifelong friendships. Because this is a time, guys, where it's not a time to isolate yourself, as I said before. You need to grow in lifelong friendships with people that love Jesus. And just have fun. I'm serious. Like, have fun. Enjoy your life. Like, go out. Go bowling. Go play paintball. Go out. Go fishing with your friends. Go camping with your friends. Have fun. Enjoy life now. Build those friendships with people that you know are going to last a lifetime. So grow in lifelong friendships. And the third is this. The third way to prepare is learn how to love. Learn how to love. 1 Corinthians 13, 4-7 says this. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. That's 1 Corinthians 13, 4-7. And then Paul jumps to this, because this is Paul talking. He jumps back down to this one in verse 11. He says, when I was a child, I talked like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I put the ways of childhood behind me. I have 4 kids. And what I know about my 4 kids is that they have not developed what it looks like to love. You think, wow, that's kind of terrible. Because what is love? Love is what? Patient? My kids are not patient at all. They're not kind a lot of times. They're very envious sometimes of their brothers and sisters. Sometimes they're rude to other people. They're very self-seeking. Sometimes they're all about themselves. They want to be the center of attention. They're easily angered. They get mad easily. They keep records of wrongs. But Paul says, when I became a man, I put away childish things. When I was a child, I reasoned like a child. I talked like a child. And to be honest, guys, when me and Rihanna got married, I got to say this. If I'm looking at this biblical definition of what love is, I don't know from the biblical definition of love that I really loved Rihanna when we got married. And you'd say, wow, that's pretty harsh. Like, why would you marry someone that you didn't love? I thought that I loved her. And what I mean by that is this, is like I've had to learn a lot of patience. I've had to learn a lot of self-control. I've had to learn how to not be so much about myself and make sure that I am, I can't just go out and go catfishing all night and hanging out with my friends and like that. Like, no, I need to be there for my wife. I need to support her. I need to show love to her. I had to learn, like, not to keep record of wrongs because, like, when we get in a fight early on in our marriage, we would have that little thing in the back of our mind that the next time it happened, like, we was going to bring that up, like have some ammunition to be able to fire back at her. I had to learn that. I had to learn to be patient. I had to learn to be more kind. But I'm going to tell you this. If you allow God to have you in a place of singleness, to create your character, to mold your work ethic, to do those things, to become more intelligent, to really gain strength in your emotional health, I guess I would say. If you take time to invest in those things, invest in your, I promise you that God will allow the right persons to come around. And what I mean by persons is this, is that, listen, God's going to give you guys free choice to choose whoever you want to marry. He's not going to force you into a certain person to marry. Like, God gives us freedom in that. Number 2 is this, is love yourself before you love others. This is a big one. So the first thing we need to do is to prepare. Use this singleness of your life to prepare. The second is love yourself before you love others. Now, I want to be very careful here. Because when a lot of you think of loving yourself, you think of like celebrities that's like really into themselves. Or maybe you know someone that's like really cocky and they're good at sports and they're like all into themselves. Like, those type of people, it's like no one wants to be around those type of people, right? You know what I'm talking about. They're really into themselves. And there's tons of leaders that's in themselves. There's preachers and pastors that's really into themselves. But in 2 Timothy 3:1-5, we read that in the last days, people will be lovers of self rather than lovers of God. So there's a way in which love of self can basically take the rightful place of God in our hearts. I wrote this. I saw this and I wrote this down. It says the self-acceptance of the children of God is not an active striving to love ourselves more. Rather, it is coming more and more to see ourselves as God sees us, sinful, guilty, inadequate humans who have been washed clean and declared righteous by faith in Christ. The reality is, guys, is that some of you in this room just don't love yourself. If you be honest, you just hate yourself. You look in the mirror, you don't like what you see, you don't like who you are, and you're constantly have anxiety about that. constantly have this fear that you're never going to be in a relationship, that there's no one out there for you. All this stuff, are you just constantly in fear all the time? But you don't love yourself. Most days, a lot of you guys in this room hate yourself. A lot of you guys in this room have even had thoughts of just ending your own life because you think that less of yourself. You hate yourself. Let's look at Mark 12:30. This is where I'm going with that. Mark 12:30 through 31. It says this. It says, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind and with all your strength. The second is this. Love your neighbor as yourself. There is no commandment greater than these. So our responsibility, guys, is first to love God, right? That's our first responsibility. But if we are going to be effective at loving other people, we have to learn to love ourselves and to be happy with ourselves. Because if you don't love yourself, what makes you think that you're ready to love somebody else when you can't even love yourself? You're not going to be able to do that. How can you love someone else when you don't even love your own self? Because what happens is we get into relationships prematurely, I guess I would say. And you have two people that hate themselves, hoping that someone else can fix them. And that's not going to work, guys. No one else is going to be able to fix you. And the reason that some of you guys can't give a compliment to her is because you always talk negative about yourself. I'm fat, I'm skinny, I got big feet, my teeth are crooked. And you're constantly trying to get into relationships to validate who you are. And the problem is you've never been single long enough to just love yourself. So the first thing you do when you get into a relationship is you start pointing out everything wrong with them, right? You've never been alone with yourself long enough to be good with who God created you to be. And I think this is why divorce is just so big, guys. I really do. Because we hope that when we get married that someone else will be able to fix our deficiencies, right? And then what we do is we put these unrealistic expectations on other people, on another jacked up human being that can't fix our problems. Someone else can never, ever fill the emptiness. Man. Someone else can never, ever fill the emptiness that you were supposed to fill when it was just you and God. And a lot of you guys are just missing those opportunities, I'm telling you. So we have that. And the last is this. Singleness should be undivided attention. Undivided devotion. 1 Corinthians 7:32 through 35 says this. It says, I would like you to be free from concern. An unmarried man is concerned about the Lord's affairs, how he can please the Lord. But a married man is concerned about the affairs of this world, how he can please his wife. And his interests are divided. An unmarried woman or virgin is concerned about the Lord's affairs. Her aim is to be devoted to the Lord in both body and spirit. But a married woman is concerned about the affairs of this world, how she can please her husband. I am saying this for your own good, not to restrict you, but that you may live in a right way in undivided devotion to the Lord. What Paul's saying here is that he recognizes that when a person doesn't have family responsibilities, that they're more free to just serve God. And the main reason that Paul considered being single was, that's why he preferred to be single. Guys, I'm telling you, give God during this season of your life your undivided devotion. Take time and spend time in prayer. I remember, honestly, this is no joke. When I was your guys' age, me and my buddy, he had this big closet downstairs in his basement. We literally blocked off half of his closet, and we made ourselves a room in there. We had a black light on the ceiling. and we had blankets on the floor, and all over the walls were people's names, and there were Bible verses all over the wall. And I'm just saying this to boast on myself, but what we did was we spent time in prayer. Sometimes I would go in there and I would just weep and cry over some of my friends. And I would be in there and just till I fell asleep. And I would literally fall asleep in his closet praying for people. Because I realized, man, guys, our time is so short. And we have to use this time to be devoted to God. Take time, read His Word. Be devoted to God. Come here faithfully. Even when you don't want to, just keep coming. We gotta be devoted to God, because listen, if you are not devoted to God during this season of your life, I promise you it's going to be a very, very frustrating season of your life. It really will be. Because what does it say? What does it say there? It says, when you are married, you are concerned about how you can please the Lord. When you're unmarried, you are concerned about how you can please the Lord. However, a married person is concerned about how they can please their spouse, and so their interests are divided. And I get it. The time I had as a teenager, I don't have that time anymore. I don't have those times to go and just pray all night long in a closet. It's not that easy now, because I have an obligation. I have an obligation to my job. I basically go to work. I come home. I help cook. I help clean. I do the dishes. I do the laundry. We work together to clean up the house. I make sure that the homework's done. I make sure that the kids have their teeth brushed, their teeth flossed. I make sure that they got their showers, their baths for the next day. And by that time, it's basically 9:30 or 10 o'clock. And I've spent my entire day devoting all that entire day to my family. Now, I'm not saying that to say, oh man, poor guy. No, I love being a dad. I love being a husband. I love Rihanna with my whole entire heart. I would not trade my life for anything in the world. But I'm just telling you this, is that you need to take advantage of this season of your life, because you're not going to be able to get it back. Don't waste your entire teen years trying to pursue relationships with people that don't matter. Because it takes a lot of work. I promise you guys, if you don't do these things, if you don't begin to view singleness as preparation, if you don't learn to love yourself, if you do learn to love yourself, you'll be much better at loving others. If you give God your undivided devotion, you won't just settle for anything less than someone that loves Jesus. Because when you prepare, you know who you are. When you love yourself, you won't settle for anyone else. I want to end tonight with this triangle here. If you could just pull that up real quick. So, just think of your future spouse. Maybe we don't have to say spouse. We could just say person that's pursuing God as well. So we have you. We have, just say spouse right now, and you have God. Right now, during this time of your life, I'm just going to challenge you guys. If you're going after God, which way do you have to go after God? You have to go up, right? If you guys are going after God and you're pursuing Him with your undivided devotion, like this season of your life, like, man, I'm pursuing God with everything I have. Like, I'm trusting God for my career. I'm trusting God where I'm going to college. I'm trusting God in my relationships. I'm trusting God in my friendships. I'm asking God for help for my homework. I'm just asking, I'm going after Him with my full heart. When you go after Him with your gifts, with everything that you have, and you begin pursuing Him, what God's going to do is what's going to happen is you're going to be like going up this way, right? As you're pursuing God, do you know what God is in the meantime doing? He's going to be preparing over here on the other side someone that's going that exact same direction towards God. And you see, when you're up here, when you're pursuing God and going towards Him, you're not going to settle for someone that's down here. You're going to settle for someone that's going after the same thing that you're going after. And when I'm telling you, when you go after God together, what's going to happen is, what happens is if both of them goes up together, what happens to those two? They become closer, right? They become closer in their relationships, and they become closer to God. Because why? Because they're pursuing the same things. But right now, during this season and this stage of your life, I'm asking you and I am begging you to not just dive into a relationship just to make sure that you have a relationship status. Take time right now to say, I'm preparing in this season of my life. I need to learn to love. I need to grow in those seasons of my life. Because a lot of you guys, let's just be honest, a lot of you guys are about yourself right now. You're not growing in the things of God. A lot of you guys, if you be honest, you're in a relationship right now and you have no idea how to even love. Because you think that loving is kissing that person, it's holding their hands, it's texting them, it's how they make you laugh, it's how they make you feel. No, that's not the biblical definition of love. Pursue God in your singleness. And I promise you, if you have the desire to get married one day, God will work that all out. But you got to put your trust in Him in your singleness and take advantage of this season of your life. Everyone's staying with me. Don't waste it. Because during this season of your life, guys, God wants to give you vision for your future. He wants to give you purpose. And He wants you to know that He wants you to know who you are without another person. Because if you dive into a relationship prematurely, you're going to let that person define who you are instead of letting God define who you are. And you'll always be looking for someone to validate who God already says that you are. If I could have every head bowed and every eye closed, I wonder tonight if you would just be real honest tonight and say, man, I'm just really struggling in my singleness. I do feel isolated. I do feel alone. And I'm just struggling during this season right now. And it's not easy sometimes to avoid relationships because I do feel that pressure. Would you just raise your hand, just be honest, just pray for me in my singleness? I see that hand. I see that hand. I see that hand. Amen. Anybody else? Maybe just be honest and just raise your hand and say, you know what, I'm okay with my singleness, but to be honest, like I have a hard time finding time. I just am terrible at managing my time and energy. Would you just raise your hand and just say, I need help with that? Anybody all see those hands? See all those hands? God, I pray that you would just come down right now in this room and in this place, God, to help each and every teen to trust in you during this season of their life. God, to give them time to grow in you. Help them to figure out friendships right now. Help them to focus on their relationship with you, God. Teach them how to love so that they can love others, Lord. Teach them how to be leaders, God. Help them to grow in their gifts. God, give them strength to not be bombarded with the pressures of singleness. But God, help them to just grow in you. In Jesus' name, amen.